The first annual International Parliamentary Forum for Asian-Pacific Security was held for 2 days on January 13th and 14th at the Grand Hotel in Taipei. Parliamentary representatives from 50 countries throughout the world took part in discussing security issues concerning the Asian-Pacific region. The stately occasion was heralded in by a cocktail reception and Taiwanese Aboriginal dance on the evening of the 13th. Taiwan Premier Yoshi Kun also made a welcoming speech. In order to deepen and solidify Taiwanese democracy, it is very important for us to hold referendums in order to comply with the process of much-needed constitutional reform here. This is further an important step in Taiwan becoming a complete nation and is the purpose behind President Chen Shui-bian's push to bring about a peace referendum during this year's elections. On the one hand, we want to preserve the status quo here, and on the other, we wish to use the referendum to voice our basic human right to safeguard the peace and security of the people in Taiwan now and for generations to come. The International Parliamentary Forum for Asian-Pacific Security Honorary President Ben Gilman hopes that this meeting will strengthen international interaction and cooperation in a mutual effort to pursue world peace.
We look for peace in Taiwan, peace in the Asian Rim communities, and peace throughout the world. Let us look forward to working with each other to develop those common goals.
Promotion Association for Public Affairs President Wu Mingji delivered a speech expressing a desire to see the Asian Security Forum build a bridge of communications between nations.
Let us work to build that Interparliamentary Forum as a multilateral mechanism for effective dialogue that will ensure long-term stability in the Asia-Pacific region.
The U.S.-based Formosa Foundation Chairman Wu Li congratulated the forum on its success in bringing about a mutual effort to maintain long-term development in the Asian-Pacific region.
Let's hope that through the hard work and understanding of the international community, such as this forum, the crisis in Taiwan Strait is resolved by peaceful means and not at the expense of the Taiwanese people's hard-earned freedom, democracy, and dignity.
Gathered dignitaries then raised their glasses in a mutual toast to the successful completion of this year's symposium.
To peace, stability, and a successful convention. Cheers.
Association President Chong Sai spoke at the opening ceremony. Vice President Annette Lu, Legislative Speaker Wang Jinping, and U.S. Representative Ackerman expressed the desire to consolidate a consensus on Asian-Pacific security.
This International Parliamentary Forum, we need to effectively unite members of Parliament from around the world in addressing issues of common concern relating to Asia-Pacific security. IPF could emerge as new multinational arena for substantive interaction to ensure long-term stability.
The Legislative Yuan in Taiwan gave our country's head of state and Commander-in-Chief Chen Shui-bian the right to hold a self-defense referendum. President Chen's stance is that we can defend Taiwan's security and the stability in the Taiwan Strait by going through the democratic procedure of giving the people a right to make their voices heard. We can let the world hear, including the leaders and people in China, that the Taiwanese are peace-loving people. I believe we should have more support and that there should be absolutely no misgivings nor boycotts concerning our referendum. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Vice President Lu, for your speech. Let's now welcome Taiwan's Legislative Speaker Wang Jinping, who will say a few words. This forum is to give a platform and open channels of discussion for parliamentary members around the world. It allows us the chance to disencumber ourselves from the burdens of party affiliations and political trappings to more completely fulfill our duties as representatives of the people. We need these sorts of gatherings to air out what we can and to take the pulse of the security and prosperity of the Asian Pacific region. I wish the symposium success in bringing more vitality to the region and wish each participant the best of everything for the coming year. Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate Speaker Wang's words of encouragement.
Imagine how beautiful the world might be if all of those who profess freedom and liberty and decency pass referendums rather than positioning missiles. Like you, each of my fellow delegates, I look forward to the remarks of our most distinguished speakers and in working together now and in the future to achieve the peace, prosperity, and security which are our common hopes for all of our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Congressman Ackerman.
This year's Asian Pacific Security Symposium has gathered over 150 dignitaries from 50 nations, which is testimony to the high value the symposium has received internationally. Participating nations included the United States, Canada, Panama, Paraguay, Honduras, El Salvador, and the Dominican Republic from the Americas, Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, and the Philippines from Asia, England, France, Finland, Germany, Iceland, Ireland, Italy, Holland, Belgium, Norway, Sweden, Spain, and the European Union from Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, Solomon Islands, and Papua New Guinea from Oceania, and Swaziland from Africa. Representatives from the 5 major continents all gathered in Taiwan in what can be considered an exceptionally grand occasion. This venue for international exchange allowed the world to witness Taiwan's democratic success. During the luncheon, U.S. Representative Wexler made some remarks urging the world to support Taiwan's bid into international organizations.
As we embark upon a new year, it is imperative that the nations represented here advocate for Taiwan's participation in international bodies such as the World Health Organization. It is unconscionable that 23 million Taiwanese people have been excluded from receiving the benefits of membership status in the WHO, including collaborative efforts to combat infectious disease, allocate humanitarian assistance, and develop basic health care. The exclusion of Taiwan from the WHO has deprived the people of Taiwan from a number of progressive healthcare developments, impaired its crisis response teams, and created a wall of separation between Taiwan and the global healthcare community. Never was this more apparent than in 2003, when the SARS virus claimed over 80 lives in Taiwan alone. Healthcare is an issue that transcends borders and politics, and is addressed most effectively through international cooperation and collaborative support. This is why we must renew our conviction to assist Taiwan in its effort to obtain observer status at the World Health Assembly this May.
Japanese Representative Fuji Takao also made a speech that strongly confirmed the depth of Taiwan's democratic success. Taiwan's peaceful democratization has the full support of Japan and other East Asian nations, as well as Europe and the entire world. I would like to extend my sincerest respect for Taiwan's success through participation in this symposium. Regrettably, Japan hasn't had formal diplomatic relations with Taiwan since 1972. But in fact, The cultural and economic exchange we share grows closer each year and actually exceeds that of Japan and Chinese exchange. The importance of the Asian Pacific Forum lies in its 6 group discussion sessions. 3 of those discussions will center on North Korean nuclear proliferation, the expansion of Chinese military strength, and Japanese-U.S. cooperation.
With North Korea continuing to ratchet up its capabilities, efforts to resolve the crisis have returned to the idea of talks with the U.S. and the other regional powers. So with China's mediation, a round of 6-party talks between the U.S., South Korea, North Korea, Japan, Russia, and China took place from August 27 to 29, years 2003 in Beijing. The main focus of these talks was to ensure North Korea would give up its nuclear weapons program. But regrettably, no substantial progress has been made. The U.S. and North Korea remained on different tracks. North Korea wanted to first sign a mutual non-aggression treaty with the U.S. in order to change the U.S. hostile policy to North Korea before addressing the nuclear weapons issue. But the U.S., in contrast, demanded that North Korea give up its nuclear program before moving on towards other issues.
Beijing must decide on which side of the fence its policy falls. China has little to gain and much to lose if the Korean Peninsula becomes a nuclear hotbed, because a destabilized peninsula runs contrary to China's economic and security interests. China should not be fooled into thinking that the United States and our democratic allies in the region will accept short-term stability in North Korea as a substitute for a nuclear-free peninsula. China risks its growing relations with the United States by taking this wavering position, and Beijing must understand that the only acceptable solution to this crisis is freezing Yongbyon and ending North Korea's highly enriched uranium program. Finally, Beijing must do more to stop North Korean proliferation through China's airspace and ports.
On developing nuclear weapons, deploying various types of missiles, and having kidnapped Japanese people, which are terrorism.
The real solution is, of course, democratic elections and establishment of democratic institutions in North Korea. What the North Koreans are, or North Korea are trying to do is, in my opinion, blackmailing the world community by threatening to build up nuclear forces so that they can get aid, so that they can get development aid and support. And, of course, we should give them support because of the people who lives there are starving. But it's a terrible strategy, and it shows the nature of this horrible regime in North Korea.
I believe that the Philippines prefers to count on the reason and restraint exercised by the responsible authorities both in the PROC and Taiwan. Since we respect the democratic freedoms so valued in all societies, we find it unnecessary at this point to meddle on an issue that is better discussed and negotiated between the concerned parties. In my personal discussion with Minister Wang of the PROC last week, I have assured him I'll bring the matter to the highest authorities of Taiwan. I have also requested them to look with sympathy on the interest of Taiwan to exist within its democratic limits and to understand the concerns of the 23 million other people who are living here on this island. I will have to bring to the Chinese government this message again officially when I visit them from the 8th to the 10th of February.
Agree that the passing of substantial space technology and capability to China is a cause for great concern. As to how that concern, as to how the increased capability that China would have would manifest itself as a direct threat in terms of satellite technology is beyond my estimation. I suspect that it is simply a matter of surveillance.
China can be considered a very attractive market. But with that being said, it doesn't change the fact that it is a one-party autocracy completely under the control of the communists. Presently, China has two major objectives in the works. One is the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing, and the other is the World Fair in Shanghai. Chinese authorities are sparing no effort in achieving their objectives and are working hard to attract foreign investment. Perhaps it is merely superficial, but they do seem to be striving to give the impression of freedom and democracy. Last year, when I visited Beijing and Shanghai, I saw prosperity on one hand, but found severe discrepancies between the rich and poor areas. This is the paradox of one-party autocratic rule. As we see the debts of Chinese state-run enterprises rising, but yet all the authorities seem to care about is putting on the Olympics and the World Fair. I feel this to be a great danger. While Taiwan is an island nation whose 23 million people have forged democracy in the last 30 years, despite being under martial law for much of that time, I find this to be an outstanding achievement. The second half of the symposium will be given over to discussions on trade and economic cooperation between participating nations. I would like to discuss Japan's Free Trade Association strategy. Japan has two models of handling international economic affairs. One is the World Trade Organization, the other is the FTA. In order to promote economic globalization, it is imperative that Japan strengthens our FTA model while keeping up our WTO participation. The FTA gives Japan channels of contact with areas that are not members of the WTO. The FTA gives us the chance to promote globalization beyond the scope of the WTO. This is why the FTA is very useful, as it allows Japan to open up economic relations. Last year, a ministerial conference of WTO members was held in Cancun, Mexico. But, as it was a failed meeting, the importance of FTA becomes even more obvious.
We supplement as follows. To promote the conclusion of FTA with Taiwan and Japan, it is essential that Taiwan and Japan must deal with this issue in a low-key basis in order to avoid unnecessary stimulus and pressure from China, since Taiwan has the status of independent region in accordance with the rule of WTO. For this reason, Taiwan and Japan formed a private sector basis organization to discuss the issue starting as from 2001, following the agreement reached between both Minister of Trade of Japan and as well as Taiwan at the IPF meeting held in Shanghai 2 years ago.
The USA and the European Union must start considering long-term commercial benefits to themselves and the world at large, and recognize that growth in the poor countries is important for global prosperity, security, and stability. Thus, it is good for them too. Talks on greater economic cooperation between nations can only make headway and be strengthened if all parties are convinced that issues of their greatest concerns are being genuinely addressed. Development must be at the heart of the World Trade Organization negotiations. Trade liberalization should continue in a way that brings real benefits to all countries, especially to developing countries. Ways must be found to open up access for competitive products originating from developing countries. Barriers to agricultural produce and food processing must also be removed.
Indicated that he will hold, and I have to say very, very clearly that I give a great deal of credit to the President, because if you believe in democracy, and I've heard it mentioned here in the days that we've been meeting, people, parliamentarians from different countries saying, we are the servants of the people. We must listen to what the people say. We mightn't always agree with what the people say. The President of this country indicating to the people on the 20th of March, there will be a referendum. And between now and then, there will obviously be a very, very clear wording of what that referendum will say and what people will be asked to either support or reject. And that, to me, Mr. Chairman, is what democracy is about.
I think it's important for the international community to understand the purpose of this referendum, because we feel it has been grossly misrepresented by China internationally. First of all, our purpose for the referendum is obviously to deal directly with the threat that is aimed against Taiwan. It is to deal with the 496 missiles aimed against Taiwan right now. I think it's unfortunate that some members, especially China and some other individuals, believe that Taiwan should just take the missiles as a reality, just to take this reality for granted and not say anything about it, not do anything about it. This referendum is an effort to counter or to fight missiles with votes. Secondly, another purpose of this referendum is to build a domestic consensus on the need to strengthen our national defense.
According to the paragraph 17 of our newer referendum law, our president is entitled to hold the defensive referendum. And our President Chen Shui-bian has said again and again openly, and he emphasized on the referendum, the goal of the referendum is only to ask the PRC to remove the missiles aimed at Taiwan.
A few things we plan to do. First, we are going to hold annual conference every year. And next year, the conference will be held in Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States. But in addition to annual conference, we are going to have by subject. We discuss certain subjects and I invite the members who are interested in that subject to come to discuss. The second is by area. We can go to every area to discuss the subjects of common concern. And to do that, we decided to set up a secretariat in Taipei.
Assemble yearly in order to address security concerns in the Pacific Basin. But it represents much more than the interests of several countries, and its security concerns have worldwide consequences. It is an international effort to cure international problems.
Presently, we wish to further establish what has just been mentioned. We have 12 chairpersons from different nations who are all very important people. In the future, we can carry out an exchange of viewpoints on common topics. Through this sort of exchange, we may offer suggestions and opinions that may lead to substantial action. We all need to work hard together, and I hope through this meeting today that we will be able to further emphasize democracy and peace and further discuss international security. These 6 symposium topics will promote mutual understanding amongst nations of the region and help to reach a consensus on maintaining continued development here. After enthusiastic participation and discussion by legislators, some summaries concerning Asian-Pacific security topics were released. Asian President Chong Sai issues joint statement during closing banquet.
Statement. The International Parliamentary Forum for Asia-Pacific Security, IPF, held its first annual convention in Taipei, Taiwan, from 13 to 15 January 2004. The convention was attended by over 150 delegates from 50 countries. Delegates expressed their common concern for peace and security in the Asia-Pacific region, and in particular, reached the following conclusions.
The statement included demands for China to immediately remove missiles aimed at Taiwan, as well as expressing staunch support for Taiwan's referendum initiative. This organization also recognizes the right of every nation to hold referendums according to their own law. Furthermore, this peaceful expression of the people's will cannot be taken as an act of incursion or provocation. Taiwan's self-defense referendum is simply an expression of democracy. One last thing, the meeting will be held next year in June in Washington, D.C. Thank you. The banquet came to a climatic close when former President Lee Teng-hui delivered a speech. When the referendum bill was passed in November of 2003, President Chen Shui-bian made it clear that the ballot should be held at the same time as the presidential election on March 20th, in accordance with Article 17. He then called on China to dismantle the 496 missiles that are aimed at Taiwan and to renounce the use of force to annex Taiwan. The self-defense referendum has caused worries for the United States that Taiwan was trying to change the status quo in the Taiwan Strait. I had this to say about the perception that Taiwan was acting unilaterally to change the status quo. I believe the contrary to be true. I believe it is China and not Taiwan that is provoking a change. China presently has 496 missiles pointed at Taiwan and annually increases that number by 50 to increase pressure on Taiwan. Can this sort of aggression not be considered changing the status quo? I hope that this symposium can help lay the groundwork and make a contribution toward helping to establish long-term human peace and happiness. It is my understanding that the Chinese embassy in Japan formally asked the Japanese authorities to publicly oppose the holding of a self-defense referendum in Taiwan. The Japanese authorities did not see any reason to do so and did not succumb to Chinese pressure, but they did dispatch someone to express concern to our government. The U.S., under their Taiwan Relations Act, is committed to maintaining peace in the Taiwan Strait and continues to sell us arms. Which shows their concern of the threat of force from China. In 1995-96, when China used the pretext of military exercises to fire missiles off the coast of Taiwan, the U.S. immediately sent aircraft carriers to help defend us. I am very grateful to the U.S. for their support of Taiwan and our democratization. I therefore feel that I must assuage American misgivings and explain matters clearly to Japan and other free democratic nations. First of all, I would like to thank U.S. President Bush for stating clearly to Chinese Premier Wen Jiabao that if China used force to change the status quo in the Taiwan Strait, then the U.S. would most certainly intervene. But when President Bush mentioned that he felt Taiwanese leaders were actually unilaterally trying to change the status quo, he was alluding to Chen Shui-bian's self-defense referendum. I feel I have to say that I think the situation to be exactly the opposite. Thank you, Mr. Lee, for your enlightening speech. Representative Hiranuma Takio from Japan would now like to say a few words in support of Taiwan. I was very moved by former President Lee's speech. I would also like to express my sincerest gratitude to Legislator Tsai and all the workers here in Taiwan for holding such a grand symposium. Furthermore, I find it very significant that participating representatives have worked so hard last night and this morning in coming out with the joint statement that was just released. I would also like to express my gratitude to the 150 representatives from 50 countries for their hard work in the course of this symposium. U.S. Representative Shabbat has been a longtime friend of Taiwan, and he delivered a speech saying that we should strongly denounce the Chinese missile threat against Taiwan, as well as affirm the accomplishments of democracy here.
My friends, the future of Taiwan must be resolved peacefully with the express consent of the people of Taiwan and free from outside threats, intimidation, or interference. I cannot stress strongly enough that the future of Taiwan should be determined by the people of Taiwan. I had the honor of speaking at the dinner banquet after President Lee Teng-hui, the father of Taiwan democracy. Sharing the stage with a statesman who has had such a great impact on the history not only of this nation but of the world was one of the highlights of my career in public office. Tonight, I am fortunate to experience the honor of being here with President Lee, and let's hear it again for this wonderful President Lee. I also want to thank my good friend, President Chen Shui-bian, for his hospitality during our visit and for the very good meeting that we had this afternoon. He serves as an inspiration to all around the world who cherish democracy. I know my colleagues from the Congress look forward to seeing him soon in Washington, D.C. on an official state business in the United States.
The Aboriginal dance and closing banquet brought the Asian-Pacific Forum to a close. Participating dignitaries have lauded the significance of international exchange that this conference has brought and showed support for Taiwan's referendum initiative.
A referendum is a right of all peoples, and I'm pleased to have been here to be able to support
the issue of the referendum. And I'm only speaking as one member of Congress, but to me it seems like the people of Taiwan should determine that issue. If the people of Taiwan want to voice their concern, their belief relative to these missiles, they ought to have the opportunity to do that. They shouldn't be dictated to by China, nor should the United States.
We planned on coming to this forum. We did not know that we would be coming on the heels of a statement by the President of the United States, as was referenced earlier. I believe President Bush's comments relative to the proposed referendum here in Taiwan were a great mistake. A great mistake because it represents not just a mistaken belief as it relates to Taiwan, but it's a contradiction of what it is to be an American. It's a contradiction about what's in the hearts and souls of all Americans. I'd just like to close with this. There will always be slight tensions between democracies. That's fair. But the Taiwanese people should always know that the American people are with them 100%. And in the United States, freedom and democracy will always win out over authoritarian dictatorship. And they should have that confidence, and they should proceed with their democratic wishes, knowing that the United States will be with them.
Now have a congressional caucus on Taiwan. And Congressman Wexler and Congressman Shabbat are co-chairs of that caucus. And I'm honored and pleased to be part of it. It's probably one of the largest, certainly the fastest growing caucus in the Congress. And it's because of the relationship that we have and the importance that we ascribe to Taiwan. It's a bit controversial, I guess, in the news because there are consequences to making that kind of decision. But democracies, real true democracies, live with those consequences once those decisions are made. And the right of the free people on Taiwan to have a resolution, to vote, to express their opinion, is the absolute essence of what democracy is really all about. That people are saying the controversy isn't whether China is pointing so many hundreds of missiles in the direction of the free people of Taiwan, and not the fact that the people on Taiwan have decided to have a referendum expressing their opinion about that in a peaceful way, as democratic people do, is sort of mind-boggling. I mean, those people who would be critical of the fact that Taiwan has made such a decision should first be, I believe, much more strongly critical of the fact that the Chinese are pointing those missiles in this direction. If every people in the world would have referendums to express their opinions and their differences, rather than pre-positioning missiles in the direction of somebody else, the world would indeed be a much better place.
Mentioned to the President just a short time ago, it is a right that the people in the United States just recently decided with regard to a referendum in the state of California. So we know in our own nation that this is something that the people have to decide, the people have to make that decision, and I encourage them to do so. Thank you.
This year's symposium strengthened mechanisms for dialogue amongst nations on topics concerning Asian-Pacific security. It has also helped our international dignitaries further understand and share in Taiwan's staunch pursuit of democracy.
The Asian-Pacific Security Forum brought together 150 representatives from 50 countries and has helped increase Taiwan's visibility as well as raise our international standing, which I find to be very significant. The content of our talks here revolved around questions of security. If we here in Taiwan can live peacefully with those people across the strait, then it would have a great influence on the Asian Pacific. But if we turn to talk of war, then the world would turn to chaos. The representatives here work hard in the symposium and all felt that Taiwan is indeed an important place. As it is not possible for us here in Taiwan to take full part in other international gatherings, inviting the world to us seems to be the best alternative. I feel that holding the symposium here at the Grand Hotel to be a wise choice. The sponsors of the symposium worked hard, and everyone who volunteered their services also gave it their all. I find that the symposium was a resounding success. Those who helped arrange this conference were very, very busy, and I thank everyone for their help in forging our nation's future. Without your help, many people from around the globe wouldn't even know where Taiwan was. I once visited the United Nations in the 1960s when we were still a member. When I said China, Formosa, the People's Republic of China representatives didn't even understand what I was saying. Formosa, what's Formosa? They had no idea. It is thus imperative to raise our visibility and raise our standing in the international community in order for other nations in the world to better understand us, Formosa.
Many nations have gathered here to show concern for our security, but more important are the strategic contributions they have made on our behalf. Now the representatives will return to their own nations and demand their governments push forward the conclusions reached here. I am sure that this will contribute greatly to the security of Taiwan, to the security of the region, and even to the security of the world.
I bring an unequivocal and strong message that the representatives gathered here have made an indelible impression. When they return home, I hope that before too long, the voices of justice will be heard. Many of you came to see me at the presidential office, and we engaged in deep discussions, and I received your high approval. I have one stern message remaining though. If we here in Taiwan cannot smoothly hold our peace referendum, then it will not only be us that face the immediate threat of missiles, but the world will have to face a crisis of values as well.
We are honored to hold the first Asian Pacific Security Forum here in Taipei. Looking at the numbers, 144 representatives are still in office, with 8 parliamentary speakers in attendance. The 48 nations represented also makes it the largest such conference ever. Secondly, the content of the conference turned out to be both important and successful. The 6 topics brought up during the symposium were discussed in great detail by all participants. I can also say that the representatives picked a good time to come to Taiwan, as they can experience firsthand the election campaign going on and get a taste for how democracy has progressed here. I believe this has given the symposium an even more diverse significance. As a part of the Asian Pacific region, Taiwan will continue to take part in international economic, trade, and diplomatic conferences in an effort to help maintain security in the region. The International Parliamentary Forum for Asian Pacific Security will become a channel for exchange between nations in an effort to strive for the common goal of Asian Pacific security and prosperity.
This is a precious moment for everyone here tonight. Seeing all the dignitaries join in the Aboriginal dance, we thank every guest for coming to Taiwan's very first International Parliamentary Forum for Asia-Pacific Security. We believe this forum will not only enhance Asia-Pacific security, but also peace in the world. The first annual International Parliamentary Forum for Asia-Pacific Security was held for 2 days on January 13th and 14th at the Grand Hotel in Taipei. 150 representatives from 50 countries throughout the world declared a joint statement to first call on China to dismantle the missiles that are aimed at Taiwan. Secondly, to support Taiwan's first referendum. Thirdly, to increase Asia-Pacific economic cooperations and to urge North Korea to abandon its nuclear plan. The first annual International Parliamentary Forum for Asia-Pacific Security brought together parliamentary representatives from around the world to discuss security issues concerning the Asia-Pacific region, as well as to enhance communications and cooperations between nations. The second forum is currently scheduled to be held in Washington, D.C., United States in June 2005. First Annual Convention of the International Parliamentary Forum for Asia-Pacific Security Working Committee, Chairman Chai Chong, Chief Executive Officer You Qing, Invitation Subcommittee, Legislator Paris Zhang, Legislator Lin Chongmo, Publicity Subcommittee, Legislator Xiao Meiqin, General Administration, Legislator Zhou Qingyu, Treasurer, Legislator Jiang Zhaoyi, Medical Support, Legislator Chen Daoming, Security Support, Legislator Li Junyi, Guest Relations, Legislator Li Mingxian, Zhang Xiuzhen, Guo Rongzong, Liang Muyang, Lin Jinxin. Foreign Arrangement Subcommittee, Legislator Luo Zhiming, He Minghao, Wang Xingnan, Chen Maonan, Gao Mengding. Banquet Arrangement Subcommittee, Legislator Wang Shuhui, Lan Meijing, Xu Rongshu. General Support, Legislator He Jinsong.